Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel, and you're looking at the executive producer of our show, of Huck TV, that is Huck, and she's doing really good today. Yes, she is. Oh yeah. I just gave her a big old belly rub out there. She loves her back scratched. Oh, that feels good, doesn't it? Oh yeah. Oh, Dad, that's good. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good girl. You do a good job, girl. Yes, you do. Okay. I gotta get back to the folks that watch the show, okay? So, back with you. And, I got a little bit of news, and that is many months ago I told you about a dog, a Great Pyrenees just like Huck, that was guarding a flock of sheep in Georgia. Nobody was home. It was her job to watch the sheep, and a pack of coyotes came in, started to attack the sheep, and one Great Pyrenees, one like Huck, ended up killing 10 coyotes. And the dog got hurt pretty bad, lost its tail, had to go to the vet and get taken care of and hospitalized for quite a while, but ended up living. And that dog won the Purina Dog Chow Dog of the Year for doing such a great job. I talk about it because it's beyond bizarre for me when I'm around Huck as much as I am, and she doesn't show an ounce of anger, not an ounce of, what's the right word? Aggression? None. But when we're out walking on the trail, man, her head's going a million miles an hour. And when we're playing, she has the ability to jump side to side like no other dog I've ever had. My German Shepherds could never do it. But I mean, from a dead laying on the stomach, she could jump side to side so quick, it's unreal. And like I've told people before, we got her from a ranch out in Polson, Montana. And their story was that they had sheep, cattle, all kinds of things. And every year there'd be predation by a grizzly bear out there. And about 10 years ago, they got 2 Great Pyrenees. That was it. It all stopped. Bears don't want to come around. And I have no doubt Huck can take care of herself. She's very spry. And it's kind of funny because people told us, when you get a Great Pyrenees, that you can't teach them to do anything. They're so obstinate, and they have a mind of their own, and they're a bunch of garbage. Huck and I have a great relationship, and I don't push her too hard, but she knows the rules, and thank God I have her. Now, what are we talking about today? We're talking about amnesia cases, that's right. I'm glad somebody's paying attention. And we're talking about 2 unique cases, very unique. One person about a month ago gave me a really hard time on one of the comments, essentially calling me a racist because I hadn't highlighted any minorities that had amnesia. Well, just for the record, we found our first one about 4 days ago. I'm not kidding you. I'll present it right here. I'm not reluctant to present them. I could care less if it's black, white, pink, yellow. I don't care. Anyhow, that person went bye-bye. I got rid of them. And I didn't get rid of them because they had an opposing view. It's because they were rude. That's it. But anyhow, this person this is a very strange case, but a very believable one. And the man's first correct name was George Ralph Livingston. He was 43 years old. He had an AKA of Michael Crawford. And he was found October 12th, 1989 at the peak of the White Tank Mountains west of Phoenix. Why is that important? Well, right when I heard this, it rang a bell for me. So here's Phoenix. And by the way, that's where I'm going to talk at Phoenix MUFON on February 10th. Hope to see you there. Just Google Phoenix MUFON, I'll be there. But he was found at the peak of the White Tank Mountains out here. Why is that important to me? Well, I don't have that many black people in my research world that disappear. But there was a young black man with a deformed arm that disappeared also in those White Tank Mountains. He was a geologist, and I did a highlight of his show right here. His dad looked for him forever, couldn't find him. It's a very strange case. And now we have two black men with incidents in those mountains. Very odd. So, George was found laying prone in the dirt in the desert by an Arizona public service worker. They didn't say what kind of work he did, probably a ranger or something. But he saw George laying in the dirt, picked him up, put him in his truck. He was filthy dirty. He had $15 in his pocket, and he was taken to St. Joseph's Medical Center in very serious condition. Nobody quite knew how long he'd been in the desert, but it was generally believed he was there for a while. There was no cars around. There was nobody around. He was in the middle of nowhere. When he was tried to be talked to, he couldn't say anything, didn't know where he was, who he was. People at the hospital believed he was somewhere between 25 and 45. He had a young look to him. He was well-spoken, and as the days went on, he started to talk more. It's one of the few pictures I could find. He had a goatee. This is him, a thin black man. Well, he was in the hospital, and after he started to come around, the hospital called the Maricopa County Sheriff. One of the detectives came out and started to talk to him. Now remember, this person didn't know his name, didn't know where he was from, didn't know how he got there. Well, while he was being talked to, he blurted out the name Michael Crawford. Nothing else about his identity, just blurted that out. He told the detective that the only thing he could remember was crawling in the desert. He didn't remember where he was from, didn't know how he got in the desert, didn't know anything. So they had him in the hospital for almost 5 days. And then he was first transferred to the Phoenix South Mental Health Center. And they evaluated him. And they didn't think he had a mental health issue as much as he had an amnesia issue. And then he was moved again to the Maricopa County Homeless Outreach Program. And the detectives came back again, talked to him, and what they decided to do was to take his fingerprints and send him to Washington and see if he was ever in the armed services, if he's ever been arrested, whatever. Well, 2 weeks passed, and the FBI sent the fingerprints back to Maricopa County deputies. Well, remember, he blurted out a name named Michael Crawford. Well, that wasn't his name that the FBI knew him under. His real name was George Livingston. And the last they knew is he was a resident of Canada. This is a weird story. The FBI stated that he was arrested in Buffalo, New York, crossing the border illegally in 1960. He agreed to a voluntary departure back to Canada by U.S. Customs. Canada had no history of him under that name. U.S. had no other history of him under that name that they could find. So they were kind of at this roadblock. They weren't sure why he kept using the name Michael Crawford to them, and they couldn't understand why things weren't coming back to him. The case got publicity in Arizona, and it slowly got publicity in other locations. Now, while he was at this facility, he couldn't work because they couldn't confirm he had a social security number, and they didn't even know if he was a U.S. citizen because he got deported to Canada. So he started to do work for free, and he started to draw pictures. So in the corner of one article, there's these pictures that he drew that are laying there. Now, they're not very... Here's the picture that was in the newspaper. He's holding up something almost like a collage. But the one that caught my attention was this one right here. Almost looks like a tripod here. Some kind of craft right there. There's the bottom of the paper, so that is the bottom of the craft, if my perception is right. Now, I kind of blew it up, and that's how it looks. Now, these are pictures that George drew while he was kind of wasting time. I find that interesting. Well, it got publicity, and BET TV, Black Entertainment Television, heard about it. So they flew out to Phoenix, and they met with George. They met with the sheriff, and they met with the physicians with his okay. And they stated that they were 100% positive, the physicians and the sheriffs, that he had a severe case of amnesia. But they couldn't find a medical reason for the amnesia. No injuries, no brain damage. They were kind of at a wall. So BET decided to make a segment about George and play it nationally. Well, they did. And several residents of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, recognized George as Michael Crawford. They called the sheriffs. They explained one man, a man named Jim Colston, said, yeah, I'm a neighbor of his outside of Harrisburg. In fact, his car is in my driveway. I'm taking care of it because he disappeared and I didn't know where he went. I want to make sure the car was going to be okay. The deputies did their due diligence, and they found that there was a Michael Crawford living on that street where Jim said he lived, and they ran it further down, and Michael Crawford had an expired Pennsylvania driver's license and a valid social security number. Well, that's pretty weird, huh? So we're talking Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Harrisburg is just east of a place called Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Why is that important? Google Kecksburg UFO. That's your homework for today. Funny thing is, I spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania. In Harrisburg, in that area, it's like UFO central. UFOs everywhere all the time. Just saying. Well, the deputies talked to Colston, and they said he's a very, very talented, expert drywall man. And he's also very good with wood. He has a lathe, and he makes custom walking sticks. And Colston and others described him as very soft-spoken, but sometimes intense. Colson bought Michael an airline ticket back to Pittsburgh, where they picked him up. And he continued psychological treatment at a Pennsylvania hospital. So, again, Michael Crawford is how Pennsylvania knew him. George Ralph Livingston is how the FBI knew him. He wasn't wanted, etc. But I find this location where they found him on the top of a mountain. I can't make it up, friends. I think that's X-File spooky. Especially since he was so far from home. How did he get there? He did write a book, by the way, about the life of a vegetarian. Smart man. There was no further updates after about a week after he came back to Pennsylvania, so he's doing well. Next case. Next case is a Washington state case, which brings me to this. If you don't know, I just recently released my third in the state series book, Missing 411 Washington. Has a lot of meaning to me. The bald eagle means liberty. And Harvey Pratt did the bald eagle design on the cap, indicating liberty. My son's initials are on the side of the cap. Website's on the back of the cap. These two together are important to me. I did this release in honor of Ben, my son. And it's just a small gesture because this was the anniversary of his death. So you can find the book and the hat at our website, NA, like North America, NABigfootsearch.com. Please go over there and check it out. I'd be honored if you purchase that. So the next person who disappears in Washington, which is not in the Washington book, by the way, we just found this case a couple days ago, is a man named Michael Schreck. Michael's 47 years old. He went missing May 18th, 2007. Pretty recent case. And guess what he was doing when he disappeared? Trail running. If you followed the cases, you know that this is really odd. But remember the trail runners that disappeared outside of Durango that I did a whole series on? Missing trail runners. Could this play into what's happening? Now listen to this. Michael was an excellent runner, in outstanding shape, loved to trail run. He held a high-level corporate job, and he was a VP. And he was married. At 7:15 a.m. on May 18th, 2007, he left his home, and he drove his Ford Explorer to the trailhead and then took off running. Wife expected him in a couple hours. He didn't return. He was going to Cougar Mountain Regional Park, about 3,000 acres. Well, at 11 o'clock when he didn't come home, his wife, Emily, called the King County Sheriff's Office and reported her husband missing. People who really don't know Washington well, it's always kind of wet, always kind of cold, always has high humidity. Well, Michael took off. He was wearing shorts, running shoes, a t-shirt. Well, Emily reported the husband missing, explained that he's driving a Ford Explorer, and they find that night at the Red Town Trailhead in the park. Well, the sheriff knows. They've got a man down the trail. The car's here. We gotta go. So they call out a search and rescue for the following date, May 19th. And they bring canines, ground pounders, helicopters, ATVs. They find nothing. Now Emily is sitting at home wondering, where's your husband? May 20th, another full day of searching. The wife's mystified, concerned. Something like this has never happened before. So we did a search on Michael, and he appears to be a mix between Austrian and German. He has a bachelor's degree from the University of San Diego, and he's a VP for Colliers International. Smart man. He fits that profile of smart, intellect, athlete disappearing, just like the trail runners I've written about. So May 21st was the last full day of searching by the King County Sheriffs. And they come up with nothing again. And they stated that they're going to call off the search because they've searched every place in that park that's possible and they're not coming up with anything. So they called off the search at about 6 o'clock on May 21st. The unbelievable happens next. 11 p.m. May 21st. Michael stumbles in the front door of his home. Wet, tired, dirty, hungry. Told his wife that he was in a ravine on Squawk Mountain. And he says he was either unconscious for 3 days or had amnesia and he wasn't sure. So this is where his vehicle's found, right about here. This is Newport, Washington, Issaquah. This is the Cougar Mountain Regional Park. This is where he was. He said he was near Squawk Mountain. Now, trail running, I could see that. This is Sycamore, Washington. There's another name for Cougar Mountain up here. Now, why is that important to me? See this boy right here on the front of my book? He disappeared on Cougar Mountain. Never found. That will always mean a lot to me. Always. Oh, by the way, on that book, a driving map comes with it. Big one. All the disappearances are on the map. Comes with the book. I'm not shortchange you here. No other author does that. I do it. So he says he was 9 miles from home when he made his way back. He said he woke up the morning of May 21st. And he knew he was in some kind of ravine. He says he remembers at one point rolling under a log and covering himself with leaves because he was tired. Doesn't know when that was. That was on May 21st. The following day, May 22nd, his wife takes him to a neurologist and has an MRI and has him examined. That's exactly what I would have done. Emily was questioned by the sheriffs and by the press. She stated that the neurologist stated that he had a bad case of amnesia, but he was physically going to be okay. Well, again, this had huge press in the Seattle area. One of the articles went to a wilderness expert and laid out the weather and what happened and what he was wearing. And the expert stated that few people would survive Michael's ordeal under the circumstances that were presented. That doesn't surprise me. Michael was in top shape. Do I doubt what happened to him? No. Why? Because we've had so many strange cases involving trail runners. Now, it comes back to, why wasn't he found? Why didn't canines find him? Why not? Well, the Schrecks, a couple days later, sent a personal letter to the sheriff and the searchers, thanking them for their efforts in trying to find Michael. Not enough people do that, but it means a lot. It's a class move by their part. I'm glad they did it. One of the last interviews he did before they stopped talking, Michael did say he remembered waking up at some point, and he doesn't know if that was the day he walked out, but he said that he was cold. He looked over, there was a big log there, and he rolled under it and covered himself with leaves. I suppose that's something you would do if you were cold. About 2 days after he was interviewed by the sheriff, King County detectives came out and stated that they'd have no more comment about this case. A crime did not occur. They were happy that Michael was alive, and they were pleased with the effort put forth by their search and rescue team. Another class move. Things to think about is this is exactly in an area where a boy disappeared and was never found. Sorry, that will always stick with me. That's one of those cases I'll never forget. And for him to disappear in that same area, for one article said 4 nights, another said 3 nights. I don't care what it is. It's a long time. And under the circumstances that the survival expert outlined, I don't know, unless it was Les Stroud saying that, they weren't unreasonable conditions, I probably wouldn't even give it two squirts. But I'm not one to question an expert like that. I think that the family's lucky they got him back alive. He could have been out there and gotten hypothermic and died, like many people I've written about have. So, and then you go back to, is it possible that he ingested some GHB somehow on that trail? I don't know. But it's another case of amnesia. And the Washington book has cases recent and old. Has cases related to air, land, and water. And this is the 3rd book I've written just at a state level: Montana, Idaho, and now Washington. Some of you would say, that's pretty interesting, Dave. Right across the northwest corner of the United States. Yeah. I do think it's interesting. And I wrote them because you have to have enough cases to make a book. Some people say, well, why don't you write about our state or this state? Some states hardly have any cases. Rhode Island and Delaware, almost no cases. Texas, for as big as it is, doesn't have that many cases. But some states have a lot. Washington is one of those states. I've read that book probably 3 or 4 times, editing it and checking it. And one of the most unusual books, I'll say, that I've ever written. And the cases around Mount Rainier will just cause your head to spin. What can I say? I can say thank you for being here. You are greatly appreciated. And please let me know if you're unsubscribed. Please check, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure your buttons are all checked, that you're getting notifications. You have to have the notification button turned on. And I always like to read your comments. Don't know how much longer we're going to go on this Amnesia series, but I still think the cases are fascinating. Thank you. Huck is just laying here snoring. I'll see if I can get a little, if I can be quiet. I think she just opened her eyes a little bit, but She's out for the count. You can tell how interesting I am to her. All right. Thanks for being here, folks. Paulides out.